Imagine you're a soldier, a war hero. You're given a heavy machine gun, 10,000 bullets, and one simple mission: defeat the enemy. Now imagine that enemy is a giant, feather-brained bird, and you lose. This isn't a joke. It's the true story of the time a modern army charged into battle against an army of emus. It was a war that left soldiers baffled, politicians red-faced, and proved once and for all that you should never, ever underestimate an enemy, even one with a beak. This is the file on the most embarrassing conflict in military history. And you're watching the Vermilion Files. Welcome back to the Vermilion Files, where we dig up the stories that sound too crazy to be true. And trust me, this one is a classic. To understand how this all went so wrong, we have to go back to 1930s Australia. The world was broke. The Great Depression had hit hard, and Australia had a big idea: give land to its World War I veterans. These were tough guys who had faced down death in the trenches. The government promised them a piece of paradise to farm wheat and build a new life. What they got was a dust bowl. And they weren't alone. Every year, like clockwork, a tidal wave of feathers and fury swept across the land. 20,000 emus. Giant birds, 6 feet tall, running 30 miles an hour. And they were all heading for one place: the veterans' farms. For the emus, it was an all-you-can-eat buffet. For the farmers, it was a nightmare. The emus flattened crops and smashed through fences like they weren't even there. The farmers were desperate. They went to the government, hat in hand, and begged for help. They didn't ask for money. They asked for machine guns. And the head of the army, Sir George Pearce, instead of laughing, said, "You know what? Great idea." He saw a chance to look good and give his men some target practice. So, the deal was made. The army sent in a real soldier, Major G.P.W. Meredith, a man who had fought in a real war. His weapons? 2 heavy Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. All for birds. The newspapers even sent a cameraman to film the glorious victory. The stage was set for a massacre. On November 2nd, 1932, the war began. The soldiers spotted their first target, a small flock of about 50 emus. The plan was easy: herd them into a corner and let the guns do the talking. But the emus weren't playing along. The moment the men got close, the birds scattered in every direction. It was chaos. The first attempt? A total failure. Not a single emu was hit. Meredith was annoyed, but he had a new plan. A few days later, scouts found the mother lode. Over 1,000 emus gathered by a dam. This was it, the perfect ambush. His men set up the machine gun. They hid. They waited. The emus walked right into the trap, hundreds of them. They were sitting ducks. Meredith gave the signal. "Fire!"
The gun roared. A dozen birds dropped instantly. It was working. And then, click. Total silence. The gun had jammed. Before the soldiers could fix it, the emus just stopped. They looked around, probably confused, and then bolted, vanishing over the horizon like ghosts. The battle was over. The score? Emus 1,000. Army, about 12. Major Meredith could not believe it. He wrote in his official report that these birds were like armored tanks. He said, quote, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world." He even noticed they had leaders, giant black-plumed birds that acted as lookouts. But the Major wasn't giving up. He decided to get mobile. He ordered one of the machine guns to be mounted on the back of a truck. A moving death machine. What could possibly go wrong? Well, what followed was a low-speed slapstick comedy chase scene. The truck bounced so violently over the rough fields that the gunner was thrown around like a rag doll. He couldn't aim to save his life. Bullets went flying everywhere, except at the emus. The birds weaved and dodged like professional athletes. At one point, the truck got stuck, crashed through a fence, and the emus ran right past them, probably laughing. The war was a disaster. After days of fighting and thousands of bullets spent, they had barely killed a few dozen birds. The story went viral, 1930s style. Newspapers around the world were laughing their heads off. Back in the Australian Parliament, politicians were making jokes on the floor. One guy actually asked if the government planned to award the emus medals for bravery. It was a national embarrassment. The army was ordered to pack up and go home. On November 8th, just 6 days after it started, the Great Emu War was over. The emus had officially won, but the farmers were still being wiped out. They begged the army to come back, claiming the emus were just too smart for them. So, believe it or not, the government sent Major Meredith back for round 2. This time, he had a bit more success. But it didn't matter. The army just couldn't win. They finally packed up for good. So, what finally stopped the emu invasion? Not bombs, not bullets. A fence. That's it. They built a really, really big fence. And they offered a bounty, paying people for every emu they dealt with themselves. It turns out that worked a whole lot better than sending in the army. The Great Emu War is one of the funniest failures in history. But it's also a powerful reminder. It's the ultimate story of man versus nature, where nature didn't even know there was a fight. It proves that sometimes the biggest gun isn't the best solution. In the end, the soldiers weren't defeated by a better army. They were defeated by a bird that was too stubborn, too smart, and too fast to be beaten. It's a perfect case file on how even the best laid plans can be brought down by a little chaos. And that's exactly what we love to find here at the Vermilion Files. So what do you think? Drop a comment below with the craziest story you've ever heard. We might just feature it in our next investigation. If you enjoyed this bizarre piece of history, do us a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the Vermilion Files, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a case. Until next time, stay curious.